Hello, everyone. My name is Wes Asmal. Welcome to another episode of Tooways to Skin a Cat, a show where we talk career experiences, entrepreneurship, and investments. The main aim is to show that there's more than one way to be successful other than just climbing the corporate ladder. We are live on LinkedIn and YouTube, and the show will be available on podcast by tomorrow morning. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on that notification bell to get automatically notified when the next episode comes out. Ooh, I'm tongue tied today. If you are joining us live, drop a one in the comments and drop a two in the comments if you're watching the recording. My guest for this week is Lianne Byrne, productivity and burnout coach that focuses on burnout prevention and recovery. Lianne, thanks so much for joining me today.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Let's jump straight into questions. Tell us your story. Where do you come from? And even outside of work, who is Lianne Byrne? Give us that backstory.
Thanks. Okay, so Lianne Byrne. I'm a mother of three kids, one teenager and two kids under 5. And you probably said that was one of the reasons of my burnout, which it was. So I'm primarily a caregiver, a mother, and I live in Cape Town in the suburb of Edgemead, so in the suburbs. And yeah, I've been in marketing and communications for about 25 years. And pretty much 4 years ago, I literally burnt out. My kind of knees fell out from underneath me, and there was a series of events that happened along that path that caused me to do that. But I was working for a really great company in the UK, and I was on maternity leave. I think I was 2 months into maternity leave, and I got a phone call that really I didn't want to receive. And that was that the company had folded. So there was no more company, there was no more job, and I was retrenched. And I was pretty much the sole breadwinner. And I think when you receive that kind of news and you realize the ramifications of that, you actually can't really function. And it took me weeks and weeks to try to figure out what I was going to do next. And obviously I had some savings and stuff, but I knew that it wasn't going to last for long. And I was also undiagnosed with postpartum depression, which I didn't realize. And it was a culmination of that. It was the retrenchment, and then it was me just fumbling along and trying to maybe make something happen in terms of my own business. But I realized I was just so unattached and so apathetic to everything that I was doing, and I didn't want to do what I was doing, but I knew that was the only skill I had. And I landed up really just not attracting really nice clients, not the best clients that I could have had. Some were great, some were not. And then the pandemic hit, and I realized I'd gone to get my son diagnosed for ADHD pretty much the day that pandemic, we went into lockdown. We went for that assessment, and I got the results after that, and I realized I better go get tested because I have pretty much the same symptoms that he does, except for the hyperactivity aspect. And I came back with a positive ADD diagnosis, and I just literally, my brain, like it was lights that were switching on for the first time, and I realized why I do the certain things that I do and why my brain works like it does. And I'm so grateful for that diagnosis because it made so much clear for me. But as the pandemic hit and as my clients were starting to pull back marketing budgets, I was again in the same spot I was before. And at that stage, I was mother to 3 kids, and it was just too much. And I literally collapsed, and I couldn't work. I couldn't do anything. And that was for me what the burnout was. I was ill. I couldn't function. I had no energy whatsoever. Couldn't get out of bed in the morning. And this went on for weeks and weeks and weeks. And yeah, it took me 4 years to get back on track to where I am today. And I realized that there was so much toxic about the way that I was working. The fact that I was working in such unproductive ways, or working in ways that were putting so much pressure on my system. My nervous system was shot. And I went back to my first love, which is my personal development love, and started coaching and studying all of the things I needed to do around the space of productivity, and also try and understand this kind of monster that was burnout for me, because I couldn't understand how this had happened. And yet it happens with so many people. So I work with women who are brilliant, talented, incredible, but they're burning out. And I want to work with them to stop that from happening. So that's pretty much my story in a nutshell.
I wanted to ask you about that actually, because the way you explained it, in most cases, moving from marketing into coaching is not the most obvious move.
No.
You were there before, or is my understanding correct?
I tried to create a coaching business when I was living in the UK, maybe about 15 years ago. And I was so fresh off the boat. I'd got a certification, but I just didn't have the confidence. And then life happened, and I came back to South Africa. But this thing had been percolating in my head for a while. And I just, everyone is saying, a life coach is a life coach, which helps obviously you navigate life. I specifically wanted to focus on the niche around productivity and burnout because I find that it's just such a massive need at the moment, specifically if we're sitting right now at the end of this year. I mean, it's crazy. And after COVID, we've gone through an incredible amount of stress. And so I think the differentiation we must realize is that, and I want to make that differentiation because stress is not necessarily burnout, and burnout is a culmination of stress, but stress over a long period of time. And the difference with stress is that you can be stressed about specific instances in your life, and then you kind of go back to normal, and you end up managing that. Burnout is chronic stress that's not managed for over 3 months, and it literally affects your health, your mental health, and every aspect of your life. And it's really, really dangerous because if you don't treat it and it becomes habitual, you then slip into depression, which is really hard to treat. At the end of the day. So I want to make that distinction between the two.
And so, I mean, you talked about the niche. You are a productivity and a burnout coach.
Yes.
To me, productivity seems like one side of the coin, and burnout seems to be different.
Yeah.
So, how do you marry the two?
Well, they married quite nicely together because I see so many people touting productivity methods and hacks and tips and everything that tries to get you to do more in your day and to make you much more productive. And yes, for someone who's employing you, that's great. But at the end of the day, if you're trying so hard to do all these things and you're not managing things like your energy, for instance, you have no idea why you're dipping at specific times of the day. And if you're trying to push yourself and you're so hard on yourself all the time to be perfect, to be as productive as possible, to follow all the latest hacks, to do all the latest things, you'll literally burn yourself up just from following productivity hacks. So there is a correlation between it because my approach is around purposeful productivity. You're not trying to do everything under the sun just to say that you've been productive. You want to choose the things that work for you. You want to manage your energy rather than your time. And I think it's a really important distinction. We, specifically women, have different hormonal cycles to men, and our energy fluctuates at specific times of the day and at specific times of the month. And my clients are predominantly women, and I work with them to try and map that energy cycle out. So at specific stages of their menstruation cycle, they are far more creative. At another stage, they're far more sociable. At other stages, they just should be left alone. And I think we understand when those times are. Don't go near us. But those stages and those hormones play specific roles in our productivity. And if we harness that, we can actually become quite effective. And we can learn to understand ourselves a lot better, specifically women. The other thing I wanted to say is that the productivity 24-hour cycle was predominantly created by men. When capitalism was birthed, you had men running the show, you had men running companies. They didn't have to get home for, childcare activities, etc. And, for 24 hours, their testosterone cycle ebbs and flows. And, a typical workday is on 24 hours. Maybe 8 hours, and it's now reaching 10, 12, even 16 hours now if we look at the way it's toxically become. But women not necessarily don't fit that time period and that structure. So yeah, I wanted to make that point around productivity. When women entered the workforce, it became much more challenging for them to keep up with that specific way of working. Plus, on top of that, you have an invisible workload that a lot of women carry, specifically if they are mothers or managing family members or caring for relatives. There's a huge amount of additional work on top. And no wonder we're burning out. And we're trying to manage it all because we all want to be perfect. And that idea and that illusion of perfection is just so it's so damaging. And so yeah, it's one of the reasons why women are predominantly in the space that they're in today. So yeah.
For the audience, we'll be responding to questions towards the end. So please add your questions to the comment section now so that we can make sure we don't miss them.
Great.
What do you have any tips for us? Or how do we prevent burnout long before it happens? What is there anything we can put in place to avoid it?
Yeah, I think what we must realize is there are different phases of burnout, and I've researched there are about 5 different phases, and I think we have all gone through these different phases here, throughout our careers. And I think the first burnout phase we must realize is that it's called the honeymoon phase. So this is where you're either starting a new job or you're starting a new business, and everything is amazing. So you have got extreme levels of satisfaction. You're very productive. You're very energetic, confident, you're excited to jump out of bed in the morning. And that's great, because realize that that is a fantastic phase to be in. And then you'll realize that as the time carries on, you might then start being introduced to more stress around your job or your new business. So you might start to feel like you are experiencing more stress. And then you're finding that you're losing focus more easily, and you're becoming less productive, and tasks are not becoming finished. So when you start to notice a drop in your productivity, you should start taking note of what's going on and why it's happening. And then physically, you're starting to feel fatigued, because that's exactly what burnout becomes. It's an emotional exhaustion, it's a physical exhaustion, it's mental exhaustion. And then it's becoming difficult to sleep and maybe socialize and enjoy activities out of work. So that's where you become a bit more overextended. Your third phase is where you're actually becoming disengaged. And this is where you start to become a little bit more apathetic towards things. You're not dealing well with colleagues at the office. You're not really focused on the company's vision and cause anymore. Maybe they don't align with your values, and you're starting to miss deadlines. You're late for work, and you're starting to battle predominantly with procrastination. Socially, you're kind of withdrawing from specific conversations, specific activities after work, and then you're starting to become really angry. And this is one of the key signs that I had when I was burning out, was that I had a huge amount of anger that was suddenly unleashed. My family didn't know what to really do with it. And I've seen it, predominantly, where you're in a space where you're frustrated, specifically at work, and you're not getting the stuff done that you need. And you just don't really want to work with others anymore to get stuff done, because you figure out there's really no point. And that's really a dangerous phase to be in. And if you're starting to notice things like this in your own behavior or behavior of your friends or colleagues, maybe it's a case of having a conversation with them. So that's like the fourth stage, is really when you're in burnout phase and you've reached your kind of limit. You can't function as you normally would. So things are really starting to slip. And then you're starting to obsess about things either going on at work or in family. There's a lot of drama, but you're very numb and you're kind of feeling a lot of self-doubt. There's a lot of imposter syndrome that happens with people in burnout, because they're starting to doubt their own abilities. They're not feeling confident about what they can do at work. They're starting to be maybe caught out for missing deadlines, etc. And it's starting to knock their confidence a lot. And then you're starting to come up with physical symptoms. So you're getting chronic headaches, you're getting stomach issues, cramps, you're starting to stay off work a lot. And then you've got people noticing these changes in you. And that's quite dangerous. And that's when you're starting to consult doctors, and doctors are saying to you, well, there's nothing wrong with you. We've done all these tests on you. We can't find anything wrong with you. But they're not really looking at your stress profile. And then the fifth stage is really when you're in habitual burnout, and you've been in burnout for months and months and months. And this is kind of part of your everyday life now. You're really either incredibly anxious and you're suffering from anxiety and you're being treated for that, or you're suffering from depression and you're being treated for that. It's chronic mental and physical fatigue, and it stops you from actually working. You really got to take time out of work. But the problem with that is that when you can take time off work and you can stay off work for a week, but if you're not addressing the problems at work, you're going to come back and you're going to repeat the cycle again. And it's not like once you come out of burnout and you're recovered from burnout, which takes a huge amount of work and I think just a real journey into yourself. You are you're going to repeat the pattern again if you don't pick up the behavior along the way. So I think I just want to make that point. I've suffered 2 burnouts now. I actually went into burnout again this year. I managed to pick it up pretty quickly. But I was literally exhausted and I couldn't anymore. So yeah, that nearly took me a month of work to really recover. So yeah, I think if you're picking up those kind of symptoms and you're suffering from that, I think it's time to talk to either a professional or someone like a coach like myself who can really start assessing what is going on in your daily life. How are you managing your time? What are the stresses on top of you, and what's happening? That's causing you to do that. And what is it that you are literally believing about the world that's maybe causing you to behave in a way that is causing you to burn out? So that's really key.
So, I mean, the way you're explaining it sounds almost like, and now correct me if I'm wrong, there's nothing actually that we can do ourselves. We can only consult with someone, is
No,
my
no, no,
understanding.
no, 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 no. Sorry, no, I didn't mean it to be like that. But the point is, I think you hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, self-care. What are you doing about self-care?" And everyone says, "Oh, yeah, I went to the salon and I had my nails done, or I had my hair done, and that's my form of self-care." It's not. And we are so bad at making self-care a priority because we are trained and conditioned by society that we should never put ourselves first. We need to sacrifice all the time. Women are particularly bad at that. We are conditioned to be good girls throughout our lives. We're told, please behave, be a good girl, don't upset the boat, don't do this, don't do that. And it stops us from setting boundaries, saying no, choosing what's best for ourselves. It causes us to sacrifice a lot of our time and energy. And at the end of the day, time and energy leads you to a space where you are actually burning out because you're not servicing yourself. You are in service of everyone else, and it is exhausting. So yeah, I think self-care is huge on the map. And self-care is, self-care, for instance, could be paying your taxes and getting your tax returns done. It's as simple as going to bed at 9 o'clock at night. And if you're noticing you're really tired, then you can put these things in place. But if you're not disciplined in doing that, you're going to find yourself in a predicament where you are going to be burning out. And it's about really a huge journey to self-awareness on how are you behaving, how are you showing up in the world, what's happening to you, how are you reacting, and how are you feeling. So yeah, I think it's one of the greatest journeys to self you can ever take on being on a burnout journey.
You talked a little bit about your experience also in the last year about it taking you a month. Let's say someone is currently experiencing burnout. Generally, how long does it take to recover from burnout? And you've given us tips. So does it depend on which level of burnout you're in?
Yeah.
Maybe give us some thoughts there.
Yeah, it definitely depends on what level you're in and where you can put interventions in. But if you're in the process where you're actually physically, emotionally, and mentally exhausted, where you cannot function, you can't get out of bed in the morning, you are going to have to be booked off work. And then you're going to need an intervention where you're going to either have to see a psychologist or you're going to have to see someone who's going to help you get out of that space. You can catch it before you get to the fifth stage if you're aware of what's going on and if you're hearing this talk. Maybe it's a case of really starting to look at your routine every day. How are you building in that self-care into your life? How are you setting up the interventions so that you can say no to people? Do you know who are the toxic people in your life that you that you actually need to get rid of? Like spring clean, do a huge amount of work on yourself. If you're not aware of what's going on, maybe it's a case of then talking to someone who can start asking the right questions and start getting you thinking to start affecting some sort of behavior change. Because at the end of the day, it is all behavior change that you need to make to start recovering.
And I see, and you mentioned it also about, you mentioned specifically ADHD coaching, and it's also listed on your profile. How does ADHD coaching or coaching someone with ADHD differ from the normal? Well, normal is a bad word, but everyone else.
Neurotypical is the word.
Apologies.
I think the work that I've done with myself and with the clients that I've had is that, people who suffer with ADHD and ADD mask a lot, specifically women. So mask meaning that they pretend that they're okay. They pretend that they're trying to fit in with everyone. And it takes a huge amount of mental capacity and mental exertion to do that. So if they realize that they're distracted, they're very easily distracted. It could take a huge amount of effort to mentally keep pulling yourself back to on task, being on task, being on task. Whereas People who are probably neurotypical are it's easy for them to say, okay, I'm going to focus. I'm doing a blog post in 1 hour and I'm going to get it done. And they get it done. Meanwhile, if you've got ADHD, you've done the shopping, you have done the gardening, you've done everything except the thing that you're supposed to be doing. And it's really difficult because what happens is that you start to berate yourself and you start to be really hard on yourself because you have to measure up to this neurotypical standard that the world has set. And people don't understand your brain. They really don't. And so you have to keep pretending that you're something that you're not. And that makes you doubt yourself. And it leads to a lot of issues around self-confidence. So there's a lot of work to be done around really from the perspective that I come from. What is it that's on your task? When are you best in terms of managing your energy? What is it that distracts you the most? Do you have the hyperactivity aspect to it, or do you have the just the distractive aspect, the ADD? And then a variety of things that we look at just around productivity, the way people work, and really assessing how effective and how productive they actually are, and maybe introducing new things for them to do. I think we must never underestimate the role of something like meditation, for instance, because it is incredibly calming on the mind, and it's used a lot for people that work, that have ADHD or ADD. So it's about introducing certain aspects to your routines and creating these habits that can then live on and make your life more easier for you.
Let's move over to questions from the audience. We've got a question from Nuleleli, who says, how do you balance home activities with work? Some people are not in the situation where they can leave their job. Do you have any advice for us there?
I think it's really about trying to plan ahead and planning your week. So if you know that there's a certain amount of things that are happening in the week, things that you have to get done, maybe you've got to do groceries, you've got to pick up kids, you've got to go to a specific activity during the week. I believe that planning is really good. And if you understand and plan your week in advance, you can then start to collaborate with maybe a partner. So if you've got a Google Calendar, you can start inviting them to events. You could share a calendar. You can start putting tasks that are similar in terms of energy. So maybe just doing the shopping and specifically sorting out, 2 key admin tasks can be done in a specific time period. So you would block that specific time off based on the fact that, it's a low energy task. Maybe you could categorize your tasks. So things that really take up a lot of brain space and deep thinking are a specific color on your task list or your calendar. And then things that are just real admin that just need to be fired off quick. You could get done at specific times when it's better for you to do that. But it's a case of planning. I mean, I would really recommend planning and collaborating, specifically if you've got a partner at home and you need to be communicating, because that's where a lot of stuff falls through the cracks. Does that answer your question?
It does. And more of a comment from Renee, who says she sees hybrid or remote working as the new norm to have balance.
Absolutely.
Has this helped? Or
100%. I think the thing is you are so able to get stuff done or pay attention to the stuff that needs done around the house in line with the stuff that needs to be done for your work as well. So it's about planning. And it's about managing the distractions around the house so that you don't get pulled away to start cooking something or watching something on Netflix. I mean, those should be kind of hard and fast rules that you could put into place. It's really about managing your time and managing your energy again, depending on wherever you are and what environment you're in. But you can get a lot more done at home. And also you're not sitting in traffic. You've saved nearly 2 hours out of your life every single day. And if you calculate that up, it's significant. So I think hybrid working is absolutely the way to go.
And any last few words from you, or anything we didn't discuss that you'd like the audience to know?
I think we're seeing a lot of women really reaching out at this time of the year and also trying to make 2023 much more of an attempt to be more successful. And I think, success is relative. What I do towards the end of this year is I really start going into what it is that you're trying to reach and do for next year. And I'm working with my clients. I'm running vision workshops where I'm actually running digital vision boards and I'm putting those together. And then I'm running planning sessions where I'm really looking at how are you going to plan 2023? What are you trying to achieve based on the visions that you've set? and then we put it. We break those goals down into specific quarters, into months, into weeks, into days, and it's an incredibly effective exercise. And I use that as kind of an accountability measure with my clients. I come back and I've got their plans, and we work towards those plans. I hold them accountable to what they chose to achieve in the year. So yeah, it's a lot of planning and that going on. And then obviously coaching, my clients around really trying to take them through the recovering from burnout. And it's really, for me, and I didn't touch on this, was the out of alignment of energies that we have as people. So masculine and feminine energy is something that we all have. Women have it, men have it. But if it's out of kilter and out of sync, and you are over masculinized, you're at a far greater risk of burning out than if you were in a much more feminine energy space. And I mean, it takes a while to explain those two dimensions. It doesn't mean that you're feminine or you're masculine. It's an energy. So when you're in a masculine energy, you're far more, liable to plan, go forward, move, achieve goals, all of those things, organize, control your situation. Whereas if you're in a feminine energy space, you're more receiving, it's more nurturing, it's more creative, it's more playful. We have lost the ability to play. And I think that's on both men and women's side. And I teach my clients how to reconnect with that aspect of their lives and their energies. So that's something that I don't know if many burnout coaches are doing. So I wanted to just mention that.
No, thanks. My coach also talks a lot about masculine and feminine energy, which is something that I did not know until I started working with a coach. So lots to learn there.
Very much so.
I think that's a great way to end. The show has been live on YouTube and should be available on podcast by latest tomorrow. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on that notification bell to get automatically notified when the next episode comes out. Lianne, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. It was really a great pleasure.
Thanks everyone for joining us for another episode of Tooways to Skin a Cat. Goodbye.
Bye.